Howdy everyone, I am back again. Today I am looking at, basically, I'll just discuss my list for my next event that I'm taking part in, the SmithF Invitational. Basically, Pascal has grabbed a bunch of people who do like battle reports, podcasts, like any kind of content creation. I don't know everyone who's competing, so I don't know exactly what they all do. But pretty much what he's planning here is we'll do a 5 round event with 2 rounds, 2 weeks for every round. And from that, we'll be getting heaps of content coming out because all the people involved are people who will make stuff about the tournament. It's got a bit of a funky structure. So basically, there's a few like variant scenarios and stuff, like there's an army swap. First of all, with the lists, I've just got up sort of the vague, well, not really the vague, the specific tournament pack. But I'll explain it anyway, so you don't need to worry too much about that. Basically, we're submitting sort of 3 sections for lists. We've got an A, a B, and a C. A is 3,000 points, and both B and C are 1,500 points. And pretty much what it is the A list needs to be legal, so you need to have a legal 3,000 point list. You need to have a legal list that combines your A list with your B list for a 4,500 point list. You need to have a legal list that combines your A list with your C list for a legal 4,500 points. And then combining A, B, and C needs to be a legal 6,000 point list. And we'll be using... I don't know if you technically have to use your A with a sideboard. I don't think you do. So there may only be one game where you actually play with one of those B or C. But you get a choice, basically. So what it starts off with, in round 1, is just a 3,000 point game, frontline clash, capture the flags. Play it on a 5x4 table, so pretty straightforward with that. The second round is 4,500 points. And yeah, so you use your 3,000 points and you get a choice between which of your 1,500 points you want to play. It's got a funky scenario where this one, nominate an enemy character in the enemy's list. The player who kills the enemy character first wins the scenario unless the opponent kills his chosen character too. So basically, you're picking a character and you're trying to kill it. And if you kill theirs and don't get yours killed, you're going to win the scenario. Round 3 is army swap. So basically, similar thing to round 2. But you're switching with your opponents. So you would get your opponent's A list, and then you would be able to choose if you want to use their B or their C. And then you're playing 4,500 points against each other. The scoring for this one's a little bit funny, because basically it just matters what you kill. So if every 225 points killed, you get 1 battle point. So theoretically, if you basically table each other, you could get a 20-20 in that game. Or if you're too worried, sitting off in the corner not knowing what to do, you might get a 0-0 if you guys don't kill enough. Which, I don't know how well that would work as an overall, like, competitive scenario, because I feel like there's just situations where you're going to go, like, particularly if you're playing a mate or something, well, there's no reason why I wouldn't just send everything forward and we'll both try and kill as much as possible. Or, like, late in the game, if your opponent, like, you might even just be like, well, I'd rather you do well, so I'm going to take some really risky choices and just charge shit in. And if you kill it, it doesn't matter to me, and you get points, you're my mate, like, it's all good. But for a scenario like this, or a tournament like this where it's pretty chilled, it probably is going to work pretty well because there's not going to be any like dodgy shit going on. In round 4, it looks like the same thing as round 2 basically. So you're using a 3,000 point list and you get to choose which of the 1,500 point lists you use. And the scenario would be King of the Hill. And then round 5 is just a big 6,000 point battle. With Hold the Ground, so it's going to be a massive, like, cluster in the center, basically. In terms of the lists themselves, Pascal did give us a bit of a guideline, which I really like. It's almost like like he's not enforcing anything, but he's just like, come on, guys, like, let's do this right. So he said, overall, don't be that guy. So, not taking the toughest list possible, you're trying to take interesting stuff and stuff that you'll enjoy. He did note that he was like, think of the battles more like White Dwarf battle reports and less like the top table at the ETC. And this is something I hear a lot, like people talking about old White Dwarf battle reports and how that's what they want the game to be. And I have no idea what that means because I've not been in the hobby long enough. I don't think I've ever bought a White Dwarf. So I'm assuming what that means is fluffy, but I don't really know what a White Dwarf battle report is actually like. So you'll see with my army list, there's less thought that goes into it than I would have in most. And I might not hit that barrier, I don't know. And yet, overall, the tournament's going to have 2 winners, apparently. There's going to be a People's Choice Award, which is just going to be via open poll in the forum, which, if we go through the competitors, we've got me, we've got Green Dragons Gaming, we've got Henry P. Miller, Shizu, Just Flow, Omar Cummins, Swamp Swimmer, Etunia. I don't know all these people. If you do, fantastic. Math CD, Bobo, Pretty Boy, Axel Vicious, Matty P. I think that People's Choice is Bobo or Omar Kaman would be my bet for that, just because they've got a lot of people who pay a lot of attention to their stuff. So I expect them to be pulling up a lot of likes, basically. Otherwise, the overall winner, in terms of like most points, is also the other winner of the tournament. But I think pretty much everyone will be in agreement where no one's really coming to this going like, I'm going to win, I'm going to be the best. It's more just sort of, we're all going to get together, have some fun games, and hopefully produce some interesting stuff for everybody out there to watch. I guess I'll go to my list now. It has a bit less thought than most of my lists, basically, because my ideas coming into this was I'll take some stuff that I like, and I'll take some stuff that I don't really use. So my A list, my 3,000 point list, it's got an Evoc Master. He's my general for the whole tournament. I don't think I've ever taken Evoc to a tournament with Beastmen. Maybe with anything. Probably not with anything, because I don't think many of my armies can take them. Yeah, I reckon I've probably never taken Evocation to a tournament. But it's something I don't use with Beastmen basically at all. I may have had some lists where I had like an Adept or something, or a Apprentice, but they've never really been a part of how I run Beastmen. So I thought I'd just try that. I got a Centaur Chief who's got the Ranger's Boots and Greater Totem. That's sort of more and Destiny's Call, which is important to keep him alive, obviously. That's probably more of like a common meta choice, but I sort of made that a little bit of a nicer choice by, in none of my lists, giving him a unit to join. So there's no Centaurs that he can hide in. And also, I kind of find him fun to have my move 10 Centaur, who's relatively dangerous. I've taken a big block of Wildhorns with paired weapons and Banner of the Wild Herd, because they want to fight. So normally I don't take Wildhorns that want to fight anything. So I figured, particularly if I'm taking Evoc Magic, now's probably the time to give that a go. Otherwise, I just took 15 Wildhorns with throwing weapons and ambush. I think that was pretty much to get to 600 points in core. I doubt much thought went into it. Like I could have gone into this and really tried to be sort of have an off the wall kind of list style or something, but I kind of wrote it. It worked. And then I didn't really go back to it. And then a week and a half or 2 weeks later was list submission. I went, oh yeah, I've already written my list, submitted it. And I possibly could have done something more funny or more interesting. But this is like my first thoughts down on paper and just went, yeah, that's fine. We'll see how that turns out. I do have a unit of Racer Tusks who I've used before. I don't know how often. But again, like with Evoc Magic, it seems like a good time for them. Maybe a Centaur Chief to join them. He can still be targeted out by things, but that would help them with leadership and stuff. Maybe that's a good idea. Really just because on paper they seem like pretty good value, so we'll just trying them out and seeing how they go. I think I just chucked the Longhorns in for another scoring unit because they were simple and easy and I didn't want to take Minotaurs or Centaurs really because they're sort of more... I mean, the ambush Longhorns are really common, but I don't know, for some reason to me it just seemed better than taking Centaurs or Minotaurs because those seem like more meta choices for doing things. Particularly because those Longhorns are really just there to score and maybe hunt War Machines and stuff. Gargoyles just for chaff. 2 of the Uprooted Tree Giants because I really like them. I'm really enjoying them at the moment. So they're not a thing that I haven't used. They're not a thing that I think is underpowered or underused overall. It's just I enjoy using them, so I chucked them in. With both of my 1500 point detachments, I just added 3 raiding chariots as my core because, to be honest, they were roughly 300 points, and I went, that gets me to 900 points in core, so I don't need to think about that anymore. The first one, I've got a Shamanism adept. I don't really know why. I guess he works well with the Wild Horns and with the raiding chariots. And with the Beast Giant. I mean, it makes sense, but it's not particularly interesting. The more interesting part about this, in terms of things that I don't try very often, is the Jabberwocks, because I've taken one to a tournament once, and he didn't do badly, but he didn't really do much that was all that impressive. In one game, he definitely died to, like, the throwing weapons from the old Vermin Swarm footpads, so that was, like, surprising and shouldn't have happened, but did. But yeah, basically I figure with like Evoc, it's the time to use Jabberwocks and try and do that sort of Terror Bomb-y type play a little bit, which I've never used before, so that's more just trying stuff I hadn't tried before. And chuck the Briar Beast in for the same reason, because theoretically they work in that sort of a list. I know that way back in the day, Fred was running things like that. So that's just basically the idea behind my B list. I filled up my core, and then I'm trying some Terror Bomb-y stuff. In list C, it's not really all that interesting. It's just another Beast Giant because I like them. Raiding Chariots because they fill up my core. Minnow Warlord, who's super expensive and takes most of my points, which I've included purely because the Minnow Warlord's cool. I like that build a lot, and he's a lot of fun to use. Without Druidism behind him and without even Shamanism to help with the like -1 to hit when he's got parry, he's probably not as good, but I really enjoy that build, so I chucked him in. And like the Centaur Chief, I was like, well, I know lots of people take Minotaur Warlords, so to make it a bit more interesting for my opponent, I'll give him nowhere to hide, so he has to be on his own no matter what. And then, yeah, just took more Razor Tusks, because this is sort of an army that I'm trying them out in, so I figured, what the hell? Overall, there's not really much planning or forethought into most of this. I don't really know how it works together. I don't really know if it'll be particularly strong. Yeah, like, I mean, it's literally just a bunch of things thrown together that I think might be fun to use or I haven't used before and I want to try out. The meta's a bit weird. I won't go through all the lists because there's a couple of other guys who have gone through all of them. And Bobo sort of went through most of them at least a little bit. And I feel like probably the overlap between people who are subscribed to my channel and people who have subscribed to Bobo's channel, it's like, if it's a Venn diagram, it's like a circle. At least, well, Bobo's got a lot more subscribers than me, so all of mine fit in his bubble, but his bubble's bigger than mine. But I will go down, and I'll just look at the other Beast Herds list, because Beast Herds are the best. So this is Axel Vicious, who is, I think, Kevin, and I think he's from Scotland. I could be wrong on both of those, but I have seen his stuff on the 9th Forums. And I think he just does, like, text battle reports, basically, and he might have a podcast. I've definitely heard him on a podcast, but I'm not sure if he was a guest or if he was the main guy there. What he has brought, I haven't really looked at this very much before, but he's got a Shamanism Master, who's got the general fighty build for them, except not on a chariot. He's got a Beast Chief BSB on foot. He's got a Beast Lord on foot. Then he's got 4 units of infantry. What ambushes? So Longhorn's ambush and one of the Longhorn's ambushes and one of the Wildhorn's ambushes. Does his characters have that? No, so all the characters would be in one of the units that's actually deploying. Then he's got some centaurs and a briar beast and some gargoyles, which I think like this is sort of a pretty cool like MMU kind of approach. I don't think that it's all that strong. Like this kind of concept for beast herds, I don't think is terrific, but given the weird meta that's come out with people just basically trying to take fluffy lists or interesting things, it's quite possible this will do quite well because sort of the overall power, I think, of lists in this tournament are lower than general, or lower than in general. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say. It's just sort of a couple of blocks deployed, a couple of blocks ambushing, and then a few supporting units. It's definitely going to be decent. Like, he's going to have stubborn longhorns. Shamanism Master's always going to be good. He's going to have a lot of magic for 3k points. Just like me, I guess, with the Shamo Master and the Greater Totem Bearer. His first detachment, he's got sort of all the beastie things. So he's got 2 units of hounds for chaff. He's got some mongrel raiders. He's got 2 big units of razor tusks, which I guess he's sort of like me, probably just trying them out and seeing how they go. He might have tried them a lot more than I have, but we'll see. He's got a razor tusk chariot, which will be good. Really, like, it'll help the razor tusk because then they'll be charging 8, but I think it'll also help with his blocks because the infantry in beast herds get swift stride to flank and rear, and I feel like going from 5 swift stride to 6 swift stride, like if he's in the right positions and he's sort of played it well, is actually probably quite significant. Particularly if people are sort of forced to give him a flank and because of how he's set up everything else, and they're like, oh, this is probably the best option if I just sort of give you this and hope you don't roll 11. Having the razor tusk chariot there to make it a 6 makes that decision a lot more risky and a lot more difficult for them. So I think it'll actually work quite well in general, but particularly I think sneakily good combo with the infantry blocks. His second one is just some chariots, some centaurs, and 2 Gore-Tex because I guess when you can choose whether to have Gore-Tex or not, they're actually pretty good because in some matchups they're just going to clean house. Like against me, let me have a look. I think that he'll just clean me out. Yeah, like I reckon basically nothing in my army could beat 2 Gore-Tex. I could sort of whittle them down over time, maybe, but yeah, like I mean, I think in the right matchups, those Gore-Tex are going to be really, really strong, and in a bad matchup, he just doesn't have to take them at all. And the only time he'd have to take them is in round 5 when he's doing 6,000 points. Ironically, I feel like... Oh no, I was thinking in army swap round, someone is taking his detachment, but they're taking his whole army, so it depends on if Gore-Tex will be really strong there. Because like in his A list, there's not much that would be able to handle the Gore-Tex, I don't think. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of high strength. And everything's stompable. But yeah, so basically I think he's got a pretty solid list. I think it is better than mine. I think it's more fluffy than mine. So I hope he does well. I'm not going to say I hope he does better than me, but he definitely deserves to do better than me with how his list is. It's a nice list for the event, I think. Particularly the 3,000 point bit. I think that trying to use those 4 blocks will be interesting for him to explain. So even if he doesn't do particularly well with it, I think it'll be interesting to look at his battle reports and stuff and have him explain, this is what I was trying to do, this is what I was worried about. Because in general, like I've tried to do blocky lists before with various armies, and I think they're a lot harder to play than single models, frankly. So it's good, I think, that someone who's good at the game, because I think Axel Vicious won the Scottish Championships or something, so like he's definitely, a fairly solid player. But it's good to get someone who's good at playing to try and explain how to play more difficult lists, I guess, which I think will be some interesting stuff that comes out from him using those 4 blocks. I mean, I guess the 15 Longhorns aren't really so much of a block, but at least these 2 that don't ambush I think it'll be interesting to see how he plays them and how well they do in the meta, basically. That's pretty much all I wanted to go through. Yeah, so I'll chuck up a link to this post in the forums. It's basically like a discussion thread for the tournament specifically, and it's got links to everybody else's content. So I'll just chuck that up, and yeah, if you're interested, you'll be able to go. Is there lists post somewhere here? Yes. Okay. So oh, and Pascal will be doing a list review in the coming days. Cool. So yeah, you'll be able to find everybody's content here. I think most people will post their stuff here. Like we've already got Bobo posting his first video from the event where he has his thumbnail, which he described as competing with me for the worst thumbnails on YouTube. And quite frankly, I think that his are just a little bit too good. Like this is almost a skillful bit of Microsoft Paint making him look like he has that long fringe, where mine is very, very poor cutting out my face and sticking on a meme. So he says that it's a competition, but I don't think he's really fighting for it. But yeah, so you'll be able to get basically everything on the tournament from here, and I think if you're interested, there'll be a lot of good stuff coming out of it. Think from memory it starts on like the 10th of October. So sometime in the 2 weeks after that, I'll probably play my game and have a battle report for that up. But yeah, if you've got any questions or anything, you can either comment on YouTube or anyone will probably be able to answer them if you post them in this thread. So I hope you guys are interested in what's to come, and hope you guys can follow some of these other content creators on YouTube or anywhere else, because at least the ones that I have looked at, they're all producing really cool stuff. So yeah, thanks guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.